Mr. Michel Rettiner, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands to Baghdad. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
So, first of all, I'm going to start by a statement you made earlier this month in Najaf. You were there and you gave a speech, and one of your words drew my attention very much. You talked about corruption, and you said, how can a person be corrupted and then can look into the eyes of a human being and God? What made you feel that much angry?
Well, actually, that's not exactly how it went. We were talking about many things, of course. And one of the people in the room was mentioning that he had experiences with corruption. And obviously, we then continued to talk about how does that work, corruption. And in the end, I said, well, it's difficult to be corrupt and to really have, look yourself into the eye. And then the comment was made a little bigger than that. But I think that's obviously true.
So how about, let's start talking about corruption in Iraq. How do you see the case in Iraq? Like, is it in a level that it could be resolved, tolerated, or there could be a solution for the corruption in the country?
I think every country has to face corruption where it sees it. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's very important to build state institutions that function well, and wherever people transgress things that are not allowed, whether it's corruption or any other kind of crime, it's important to build the state institutions so that the country can cover and deal with it. Mm-hmm. This is also our policy very much in all countries where we work. We try to assist the government to be as strong as possible. Yeah. And we do the same in our own country, to be honest.
Yeah. So you were here back in 2003, 2004, and you're now again here in Iraq.
Yes.
During the last almost 2.5 decades, let's say, have you seen this process of building institutions? Like when you look back to 2003 and you look at today's Iraq, what do you see?
Obviously, the situation is very different. In 2003, I was attached as a political advisor to the Netherlands troops who were then serving in Samawa, in Al-Muthanna in the south. This was a completely different time. The war was still going on. It was chaos, and it was a very, very different situation from now. It's not even 2.5 decades, by the way. It's only 17 years ago. Right?
Yeah.
But obviously, Iraq has changed tremendously since then. It is wonderful to be back. I mean, obviously, some things I remember from then, the heat in the summer, the warmth of the people, all of those things are very common to me. So it felt like coming home. But also good to see, of course. In those days, there was no Iraqi government functioning. It was just trying to search for the new situation after Saddam was toppled, let's say. And we were doing our best. But since then, of course, the situation has changed quite radically. Now we have a full-fledged embassy that has both an embassy in Baghdad and a consul general here in Erbil. So it's difficult to compare really the situation. But the state institutions, of course, have also changed quite a lot.
Yeah, I see. And I see Netherlands much more involved in supporting both the Iraqi government and the KRG, and also production in Kurdistan region. I don't know about Iraq, but I've seen one of the projects, a factory funded and supported by the Netherlands government here in Kurdistan region of Iraq. I'd like to ask a question about what is the exact mission you have in Kurdistan and in Iraq, and then I'm going to follow up with your states when it comes to the relations between KRG and Iraqi government and the current situation between the two governments.
Yeah. Now, we obviously sometimes it feels like I'm very far away from home, but actually no. If you think about it, all of Iraq, including the KRI, is obviously a country of 40 million people at the doorstep of Europe. So for this reason already, it's very important that the situation in Iraq and the KRI is good. So we define our policy usually as saying what we like to achieve or to help the Iraqis and the Kurdish people to achieve is legitimate, durable stability. Not only because it's good for you, but also because it's good for us. And in that framework, we try to see where could we do that. Obviously, we do that by supplying Dutch troops here to fight Daesh. That's a very simple, not simple one, but at least a clear-cut one. We try to support wherever possible in terms of human rights to create that legitimacy of the stability. We try to work on the migration issue, still 4 million people somehow displaced, of course, all sorts of reasons. But also, and this is the crucial one, work and income. Because we feel strongly that when people have jobs, they will not fall back into radicalization. They will have hope for the future. And that's not just philanthropy. It's not just being kind because I happen to be nice and blue eyes or something like that. It's also because it's actually good for us. So my best day is when I can find a Dutch agricultural company that starts working together with a Kurdish farmer, and together they actually make money. Because obviously, as you know, the numbers, all of Iraq has about 700,000 young people every year coming to the labor market. And without hope, without jobs for them, that's going to be very, very difficult. It already has a very, very young population. So we try to focus exactly on those kind of things. Not just looking back, of course we will do that as well, but also looking forward to the future and see how we can help, and in both our interests.
I see. Dutch troops are deployed only here in Erbil, in Kurdistan region,
No,
or
they're
also
not.
in Iraq?
No. It has, from time to time, of course, the roles have changed. In the beginning, it was much more focused on training. But obviously, when you train someone long enough, then they become much better. And then it sort of changes a little bit into what's called advising. So we have now, newly, a whole company of Dutch soldiers
in Erbil Airport.
In Erbil Airport, that help to protect the airport there.
I think 150 of them.
Exactly. But we also have officers that are helping the Peshmerga in the reform, let's say, everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm going to ask questions about that reform.
Please do. But we also have others who are in central Iraq, in Baghdad. We even have some also in the NATO mission, not only in the coalition to fight ISIS. So in different parts, wherever it's necessary, we discuss with other nations. It's not just us, the coalition is huge. There's 28 countries, I believe. So we look at what is necessary and we do what we can supply in there.
Yeah, I see. So talking about NATO, NATO has decided to be much more active in Iraq, expanding its activities in the country and increasing the number of its troops.
It decided to do two things, actually. The NATO ministers, NATO is an alliance of 30
countries. And you have been representing Netherlands in
Indeed, I was
Brussels,
there for the last 4 years until I came this summer to Baghdad. NATO is an alliance of 30 countries, and the NATO mission in Iraq has been running for some time already, of course. But the NATO ministers of defense decided a few months ago that they wanted to do two things. First, to expand the mandate in the sense of who could they actually train. Originally, it was focused only on the Ministry of Defense. That was a limited role, let's say, but clearly the Iraqi security forces are bigger than just the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah.
So this is the first step. The second step is that you also need a few more people to do that. So it was limited in size, and now the decision has been taken over time to see if it's possible to increase the amount of staff, both military and civilian, by the way. There are also many civilians in that mission, to see if it could be expanded. It will take quite some time to realize, but that's the plan indeed.
And of course, Netherlands is involved in that plan within
Very much
NATO.
so. In fact, the senior civilian, so the highest civilian in the NATO mission in Iraq is Dutch.
So two different sides of work. One of them is inside NATO and the other one is inside the coalition against ISIS.
But the roles of them are two different. The coalition has a role to fight ISIS. The NATO mission in Iraq has a role to assist. Advise and assist.
Yeah, okay. So talking about both KRG and Iraq, there have been endless conflicts between KRG and Baghdad, starting from the budget cuts to even disputes in the disputed areas, which led to even a conflict, a armed conflict. So right now there is a negotiation between the two governments about the 2021 budget of Iraq budget bill. What's your stance as Netherlands, and how do you see the negotiations? Do you feel that the negotiation is really between two governments within one federal country, or do you see some sort of different interference from others outside of Iraq?
Well, first of all, of course, that is quite difficult for me as an outside observer, but obviously we all try to observe what's going on. I think the basis is that we wish Iraq and the Kurdistan region government well, in the sense that we hope that soon there will be an agreement. I think that's the most important thing to say. Obviously, sometimes I'm in Baghdad, sometimes I'm in Erbil, so I talk on both sides. And I asked more or less the same question as you. I asked, like, how's it going? And
what are the answers you're getting?
Well, I talked about this subject with your Prime Minister Barzani and also with President Barzani. Both of them I asked, how is it going? And both of them answered more or less the same, that the negotiations obviously take place within the framework of the constitution as it stands. And they will try to come to an agreement. It's not for me to say that it should be article this or article that. That's, I think, not the role of a foreign diplomat. But we basically send messages of encouragement and to say, okay, it is better to have a deal than not have a deal. There's been quite a while, as you said, when there was no deal, and that's not good for either side, I think. And why it's so important for us that there will be a deal is because this has an effect on many other things that I just talked about. When we want to focus on a stable economy in this country, whether it's in central Iraq or in the KRI, it is crucially important to have some sort of budget arrangement, to have good agreements on how you deal with the oil in this country, how you deal with the border incomes. This is important for every single one of us. This is what I'm here for, to support the economy. Obviously, the bad economic situation has already led to a devaluation, which people really feel in their pockets. 20% is not nothing. Basically, it just means that your tomato is suddenly 1/5 more expensive, and this is that particular. So this is crucially important for stability in this country. Thank God the oil price is rising a little bit, but this is something out of our hands. We don't have control, neither you nor me or anybody else. But that's why it's so important that there will be a deal. And obviously we will, keep sending our messages of encouragement. And
so for both sides, you gave me examples just from Kurdistan region.
Yeah, because we're here, but I do the same thing. I have the same discussion with Dr. Ali Alawi or people in Baghdad.
And Kadhimi?
Sure. Well, that doesn't happen that often. I mean, not every diplomat sits in the, close to the prime minister every day. But
so you're sending messages both in Baghdad and Erbil, and you're getting feedbacks. Can you tell me a bit about the feedbacks in Baghdad? Can you compare them between Erbil and Baghdad?
They're quite similar. Now, both keep sending back to me also signals that they want to come to an agreement. So that's good. We obviously ask, how can we help? And then the answer usually is, well, not that much. We need to solve it with ourselves. And that's fine, of course. No, I hear on both sides that there is a great willingness to come to an agreement. And even a few days ago, the messages were sent that we're very close. The Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Ali Alawi, even told me he felt that he is almost becoming an optimist. I thought that was a positive sign, saying, well, it looks like a deal is in sight. And I wish you well with that. Okay,
but it's not only just the bill. There's also these disputed areas, and they are oil-rich areas. And there has been a long conflict. Do you have any plan or program to help the KRG and the central government when it comes to the implementation of the 140 article of the
No, I'm aware of that, of
Constitution.
course. Well, first of all, I think it's not really a role of a foreign diplomat to be involved in those kind of internal matters of any country in the world. That is not to say, though, that we don't wish both sides well in that sense. We do have all sorts of programs, let's say, whereby we support communities that have been affected by these disputes, let's say. Some of our funding goes into the support for the IDPs, for instance, which has a lot to do with the conflicts, of course. And we focus not only on giving, building them a house or access to a school or access to a clinic, but also very much on trying to recover from what has happened in the past and to look at the social side. And this is what we try to do, to be at least, a positive force in this. And again, here also, the same applies. Obviously, we hope that will be resolved soon.
Okay. So 2 or 3 days ago, back to Kurdistan, 2 or 3 days ago, the Vice President of Kurdistan, Sheikh Ja'far, Sheikh Mustafa, gave a statement to Rudaw, and he talked about the role of Netherlands in these reforms in the Ministry of Peshmerga with the United States and the United Kingdom and Germany. And he also mentioned that ISIS is not gone completely. He said the threat of ISIS is there. So basically I'm going to have 2 questions. And he said that these 4 countries are supporting us for a reform. And even they are putting pressure on us for a reform and combination of the 270 and 80 forces. This is going to be the first part of the question. What is the exact mission these 4 countries have when it comes to the Peshmerga forces and this reform? And also, Sheikh Ja'far mentioned about that if there is no coalition forces, ISIS may be able to again capture cities and control cities. I would like to have your comments on that at the same time.
No, of course, that's the biggest nightmare possible. The re-emergence of ISIS would be disastrous to this country. Obviously, a lot has been achieved in the coalition. It went through different phases. The country has been, or the cities have been liberated. The caliphate has been dismantled, let's say. But it's too early to say that this is over. Obviously, we even in Baghdad feel that very closely. A couple of weeks ago, we had 2 suicide bombers, 2 bombings in the city of Baghdad even. In the Nineveh Plains, very often still incidents happen. In the mountains, there are still pockets of resistance, let's say. So all of that is very important, not to drop the ball, let's say, and not to leave too soon and to say, well, this is over. But I'm also very concerned about something else, that if we don't invest, all of us, and that means the Central Iraq government, the KRG, and us as internationals, as partners, if we don't invest in really giving hope, jobs, security, then the re-emergence of the ideas, let's say, that were behind Daesh is a big risk. We need to be careful. We need to focus on that. And we have some wonderful programs also here in the KRI, whereby we supply supporters and trainers, etc., for instance, and professors to really notice where do they see signs of radicalization. And this is, by the way, not unique to your country. We also need to be careful in our own countries.
Yeah, because this fight is a fight for...
It's a global fight.
Yeah,
it's
for
a global
everyone
fight.
on the planet.
Yes.
And on the Peshmerga, the reform thing, is this a mission within the framework of the coalition forces against ISIS? Is it the only purpose behind these 4 countries' support for the Peshmerga forces for a reform within the ministry?
It's definitely a part of that. But this has been a long discussion, of course, where we try to see, okay, the Peshmergas have a huge name, they have a great track record in fighting ISIS, and this is much, much appreciated. But obviously, we've been in discussion with Peshmerga forces and to see, okay, where can we lend a hand? So we have a string, I think it's 24 different projects, let's say, And those could be as simple as helping setting up a salary administration, or how can you organize yourself better in the Ministry of Peshmerga Affairs. And this is a much appreciated effort on our side. And I don't know why he said that he was under pressure. Maybe it's good. I sometimes feel under pressure as well, but then I do better. So I don't think that's necessarily bad. But it is...
and he mentioned as a positive thing as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sometimes you need to, to step up to the plate, as they say in English. But it's something which has a very long-term vision on how can we essentially make the Peshmerga function even better than they do already now.
Okay. So, my final question when it comes to politics and warfare and is going to be the attacks on Erbil airport. And now there are 150 Dutch soldiers, troops there. First of all, I want to know your understanding about the attack and the groups behind the attack. And then I would like to ask what is new to protect the Erbil airport and the airbase there and your 150 troops there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, of course, I was, when this happened, I think it underlined what we just spoke about, that the stability hasn't been restored yet. So it underlines the necessity to stay vigilant. Needless to say, it attracted a lot of attention even in the Netherlands because we have Dutch guys and girls there. And they immediately realized, I was talking to the commander about this as well, that they were well trained, even for those kind of situations, and they immediately reacted the way they should. I was very happy to see that the Kurdistan regional government, and I discussed this also with the Prime Minister, immediately set up an investigation to find out who was behind this. Of course, it's not for me to speculate. People speculate a lot in this country. That's not for me to do.
They speculate enough?
I think so, but it's not for me to do. But I was very happy to see that there was this investigation ongoing, because I think it's very important. Obviously, there has been for quite a long time already those kind of rocket attacks on the international zone in Baghdad. I personally live that as well. The Dutch embassy is quite close. And we have this so often. So for all of us, it is very important to find the culprits of this, to find out who's behind this exactly and who's doing this, and for the Iraqi state to take control over those military factions who do that.
And can you tell us right now in the airport, the airport, the airbase, and the troops there are going to be safe in terms of air defense and the technology used to be able to sabotage any such attack on the airbase?
Well, yeah, obviously when a rocket falls on your head, you're never safe. Huh? Let's be fair on that.
But there are
certain things that you
yourself.
can do, of course. There are military equipment that I'm not an expert in that can try to prevent that a little bit. There are shelters in the airport area. And immediately, like I said, the Dutch soldiers, as were the other nationals that were there in the airport, were well trained and immediately took the step that they needed to take. But still, 2 people died. One initially, a Filipino, another one died a few days later of his wound. A few people were wounded as well. And those people have families as well. You know, this is about humans. And those people that do that is really, as they say in Arabic, ikhrabetum. You know, that's really, really, really bad.
So you speak Arabic, I see.
Yes, I do.
How did you learn Arabic?
My wife's Palestinian, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you have very strong ties with this part of the world.
I do, but she always says that she's the worst teacher in the world. But I don't believe her. I learned a lot from her. Yes.
Okay, including Arabic language. You can speak fluently.
I can get by, yes.
Okay, hope all happiness for you as a family.
I tried to learn a few sentences in Kurdish.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
But it's a very complicated language because, you know, it's
So what have you learned so far?
Of course, the simple ones, Zorspas and Balakirkam, what was it? I forgot the sentence, but I memorized it, let's say, the first time.
Okay, you're even better than me because the only Dutch word I know is gezellig.
That's right. Well, I thought it was very gezellig, this interview.
Yeah,
it's
to
a
me
difficult
as well.
word to translate. But I thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this
I have
opportunity.
one or two more questions. You had an Arabic word, and that's why it drew my attention. So, but we're going to talk about not hard subjects anymore. We're going to talk about the agriculture here in Kurdistan, in Iraq, and also we know the Netherlands is a country of agriculture, of milk, of cheese,
Sure.
of tulips. So what is the projects and what's the plan and what's the strategy for?
Like I said, we focus very much on work and income because we think it's the key to stability, the key to peace. Obviously, then we look at what we happen to be good at as the Netherlands. The Netherlands happens to be the second biggest agricultural exporter in the world. Only the United States of America is bigger than that. So, small country, more or less the same size as Kurdistan region here. We have much to offer. We try to do it in knowledge. So there's cooperations between the universities, the agriculture universities in the Netherlands and those here. Yesterday I spoke to the dean of Salahuddin University here to talk about the cooperation. We try to bring sometimes people both from the Kurdistan region and from central Iraq to the Netherlands. COVID didn't quite help, of course, so some of it was now made online. But we look through all the steps in the whole value chain, more or less from when you put the seed in the ground, whether it's a potato or a tomato, doesn't matter, all the way till it ended up in your mouth. And what needs to be done in all those steps. And quite often with small technical change, small technical assistance, you can increase the production very much. Yesterday I was outside Erbil, also in a model farm that we're setting up to see if we can support here the growing of cherry tomatoes. There are very few cherry tomatoes yet in the market, but we feel with a little bit of seed money we can help the Kurdish farmer and connect him to Dutch farmers and then say, hey, why don't we try this on the market? And this is hugely successful. But it's not just in that sector. You might know Gardenia, very well known. He's a Dutch, a Kurd that lived in the Netherlands for a while.
That's in Suli.
Yes, exactly. And he'd learned how to do the plant business, let's say, and he lived off. The same with cows, with the Kaiman group, goats with the Halabja group. So we always try to identify partners because, like I said at the beginning, the best part is where I can step out. If I don't have to be in it, if business works together with business, this is the most sustainable cooperation.
Yeah. So how many projects do you support in Kurdistan region?
We have many
like,
different.
For example, in 2020.
Yeah, some are small, some are bigger, of course. But if you calculate the amount of money, it's about 17 million at the moment that we invest specifically in the agriculture sector. On top of that, we also have much in water. Everyone in the world knows that we live below the sea level, the famous story of Mr. Hansje Brinker and his finger in the dike. So we have lots and lots to offer in terms of water cooperation. As you know, all of this country used to be abundant of water. That's unfortunately not longer the case. The population growth has had an effect, the dams on the neighboring countries. So there's hardly a drop of good water anymore reaching all the way to the south. So again, that's where we are also investing to see if we can lend our assistance and let another country do its best. We try to do our best.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was a very nice conversation. Started with politics, warfare, peace, and then agriculture and life, let's call it.
All in a day's life for a diplomat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice time.
Thank you.